So where are we at? Obviously we have a location here that we do soybean variety testing on in Brookings up at the South Shore Northeast Research Station with a cooperator, long-term cooperator by Aberdeen, a long-term cooperator by Bancroft, cooperator again down by Geddes, and we have a new location this year in Mueller. And so when I started the program, there's a lot of soybeans and corn grown here and we don't have any locations. So that's something we're trying to expand and move on. So how big of yield differences are there just in varieties? So if, for example, here there's 55 varieties in the variety trial submitted from different companies. At the Brookings location, we have over 90 varieties from different companies. For example, I'll get to the one here, the details on that, but the average yield difference between the highest and lowest yielding soybean variety that are commercially available that was submitted to us by companies, the range was 15 bushels in 2011 and the range was 15 bushels in 2012. So when you talk about a management decision at the front of the season now, when seed sales are going to be picking up, the variety that you start with and select in the fall really has a big implications on your profitability as an operator, as a producer. And it's equally large with corn. It's averaged really close to 50 bushel. Other states, other agronomists I know have talked, they've actually found higher differences further east than the 49, 50 bushel here in South Dakota, upwards of 70 in states like Ohio and Illinois. So where does that fall? In my opinion, variety selections is something that you really have to start right with from the beginning, so 15 bushel difference. Long-term study here, done at Beersford from 1986 to 2002, a 16-year-long plant of date study. So there's an 8 bushel difference between planting roughly May 12th versus June 14th. So also another one, phosphorus fertility, crop rotation, row spacing, possibly seed treatment in certain environments. So there's a lot of different things that affect yield, but variety selection is a big one. Real quick, let's say early season discounts $8 a bag. It doesn't take a whole lot of yield to make up that early season discount. It's really tempting to go ahead and get seed before yield results are available. So essentially seed goes out the door and is ordered before you can even look at the yield results from trials this year. There is an option I used with the company that I work with on my farm back home. I went ahead and we already sent in a check, but we didn't pick what hybrid that we're going to plant yet. There's some flexibility depending on who you work with. That is an opportunity. So again, variety selection. Let's get into what's going on here this year at Beersford. We have 10 companies that have entries with us, and it ranges from 2 entries with one company all the way up to 10 with Prairie Brand. So roughly 55 varieties are tested here at Beersford, and actually this is the location that we have the least amount of varieties tested out of all 7 of our locations. For whatever reason. Like I said, Brookings, we have upwards between 90 and 100. So out of those 55 varieties that are tested here, I looked up each of those varieties on the company's websites and looked at were they classified as resistant, susceptible, and in some cases I couldn't actually find on their tech sheet for their varieties on some websites whether it was resistant or not. Another thing I found out was, obviously, no surprise, there's quite a bit of varieties that are available that are sold in this region here in Beersford. Almost 75% of those have resistance to soybean cyst nematode. I'm assuming because it wasn't readily available, I'm sure the companies have it if you were to ask, but most of those are probably that plant introduction 88788. Some companies actually listed that in the tech sheet, some just said resistance. Susceptible, obviously some, and again, some that didn't label that. There is some other sources. Obviously, probably the next most commercially available that I've noticed is peaking, which would be another source, and companies usually have several of those available. You just aren't going to see the level of distribution across the maturity zones. For example, a local vendor here, Hefty, they have one peaking variety that's available, and it's a 1.2. So if you're down further this way, there isn't actually a group there. So it's something, if you've had a cyst problem and you've been planting a specific source of resistance, let's say the plant introduction 8878, you might want to look at something else, and you're going to have to do a little bit more digging and working with your seed company to find that and identify that for that field and that farm. So it's doable and it's available, but if you think you have a problem, it's worth your time to work with your seed representative to find that variety. If that's your yield limiting factor is cyst, then it's worth that time and effort identifying those varieties that have that. But what you're readily going to get without asking, which is mostly available, is a specific source. And they are finding that I think it's HG type 2, which can have resistance to that most common type that's available commercially. There is cases in Minnesota, for example, and other states where they're starting to find quite a bit of reproduction on those sources of resistance. So it's kind of like when you spray foliar fungicide, a strobilurin, on frog eye leaf spot in Kentucky in areas where it's now resistant. When you keep spraying it over and over again, when you keep planting the same source of resistance to cyst, it's an equal chance that things like that are going to happen. It's just probability of odds, and with all the genetic variability out there, it's a lot of selection pressure. So variety selection is kind of a big deal. That's the summary.